When I eat a banana, I get heartburn in about 5 minutes. But I bet I doesn't, which is why he loves them so much. So why not try to collect every single banana? I mean, bananas are delicious after all. While doing a bit of research on this video, I discovered that J. Cool on YouTube kind of already did this with Monkey Ball Deluxe. However, his guidelines were very different to what mine are. He was allowed to collect all the bananas on multiple attempts. So basically what he was doing was grabbing a few bananas, falling, and then trying again to get the rest. For this video and this challenge, I have to collect every banana on a stage in one go, which has a lot of drastically different strategies. So with all that said, let's get started. Sliding into World 1, our first level's name eloquently describes how this stage went. It was quite simple. The bananas are just vibing on the edge of the circle. Next was Hollow. It was almost the same level, except with this banana bunch just randomly floating in the air. In order to nab it, I had to build some speed and angle myself into the right spot, and I managed to get it after a few tries. At this point, the road to all bananas got a little tougher. Some might even say bumpy, as the stage name implies. There were two banana bunches hanging in the air. The first one, I just needed to bounce off some bumps in the ground to get enough height to grab it. The second one was harder because I had to bounce off the goal ring to get it, but I was able to grab them all and just in time too. Switches was our next stage, and it was pretty darn easy. I thought conveyors would be tricky since you usually need a lot of speed to clear the belt. After getting almost all the bananas, I smacked the wall and carried momentum forward, and I was able to just barely get through and get all the bananas. Now the bananas and floaters weren't hard to get. The problem was the time limit. There's 4 bunches on each of the corners, and you can only access them at certain times. My issue was trying to optimize when to grab single bananas and when to grab the bunches while the platform was accessible. After a few attempts, I managed to just barely scrape by with less than a second to spare. Slopes was another fairly easy stage. The bananas were just chilling in the corners. Sliders had very few bananas, but they're perched right on the edge of this corner turn. It took some practice, but you basically have to roll your way right up to the edge to nab the banana's hitbox. Once I got used to the timing, it wasn't that bad. Spinning top was immediately threatening because all the bananas are on the edge of, well, the spinning top. I didn't know if I'd be able to get any of them, honestly. I tried standing near the edge of this platform, and the top just kept knocking me out of the way. After some more tries, though, I found the perfect spot to stand in, which allows you to get all the bananas in like 2 seconds. 0 bananas were on Curved Bridge, so I just had to clear it, and World 1 was done. And honestly, that wasn't too bad, but I imagine things are gonna get ugly pretty soon. Hopping right into banks, I had no issues at all. Eaten Floor only has 5 bananas, and while they're fairly spread out, it's not really difficult. Hoppers has 2 bananas in the corner at the end, and that's it. And after that was Coaster. I'm sure most people remember this level pretty well. But can you recall that there's a group of bananas that are just sitting behind the goal pole? Yeah, while you can collect at least 1 or 2 of these bunches, there's no way you can get all of them in one run. So unfortunately, it is not possible to beat Super Monkey Ball 2 while touching every single banana. We're only just getting started though. We're gonna try out all the stages and see how many can be done with all the bananas. So next up is Bump Check. Going across the corners to get the bananas was scary, but not really hard. Swell is a stage that looks easier than it actually is. So missing 1 banana seemed like I'd need to restart, but I tried turning around, grabbed the banana, and then just went back to the goal. Gravity Slider was another level I thought wouldn't be possible, until I realized the banana bunches crisscross each other. So after a few tries, I found that by going down the hill slowly and carefully aiming, you can go off all the ramps and make your way down no problem. This was a really fun one to play. Following that was Inchworms, and holy crap was it a doozy. The first worm was easy enough with only 1 banana to grab. The second one had 4 bananas, but this time I had to go to the very end. The problem with doing that is the worm folds itself back up, and this happens so quickly that I lose complete control of where I am and what I'm doing. I had to try for these bananas probably 30 times before I finally got some lucky bounces that didn't launch me off the stage, but instead bounced me high in the air. The last set of bananas were actually easier than this, since I simply needed to go forward at the right time with a little bit of speed. So with mere seconds left, I managed to get all the bananas on this stage. Totalitarianism, or however the heck you say that, was much simpler. The bananas guide you to the areas where the discs won't hit you, so you can't really mess this up unless it's intentional. Wrapping up World 2 is Alternative, and as long as you keep the stage on the normal speed, it's fairly easy. It's too bad that Coaster had to have all those bananas at the very end, because we'd otherwise be smooth sailing. Our first trek into World 3 was Organic Form, and I only needed to get 3 measly bananas. But then there was Reversible Gear, which I'm sure you can tell was absolutely insane. Each wall has a banana bunch in between it, and I had to get all of them in 60 seconds. The only way to do this on time was with a lot of trial and error. Trying to figure out where you needed to be to get each banana and getting them without dying was quite the task. After probably 50 attempts, I got the patterns down and just needed to get to the goal pole with 10 seconds left. I was lucky enough to get inside, but then I missed the goal. The time was only ticking down, and then with less than a second, I managed to beat this stage. And let's keep in mind, this isn't even the hardest stage. You'll understand what I mean in a bit. Stepping Stones has 2 branching paths, both with bananas on each, so I definitely cannot get them all in one go. I did opt to take the harder path because, well, why not, and it contains a banana bunch. And for the heck of it, I tried building speed at the bottom to attempt getting height to reach the other path, but I wasn't even getting close. Maybe a taskbot could somehow complete this stage? I'm not really sure. After 2 tricky stages, Bubbles was a breeze. I just needed to keep moving at a good pace and was able to clear it, albeit I only had 4 seconds when I finished. URL was another easy stage. I just took my time and grabbed them all. Besides getting launched 80,000 feet in the air, Mad Rings simply required good timing and the bananas were mine for the taking. And then there was curvy options. There's 4 different paths, all varying in difficulty, and I had to somehow clear all of them since they all have bananas. The first 2 on the left are simple enough. It's the last 2 where things get stupid. My first strategy was to just go from easiest to hardest. Outside of dying literally hundreds of times, I kept getting down to the very end with only like 5 seconds left. So I knew this was definitely possible, but the time was putting too much pressure on me, therefore making it way easier to die. Let me tell you, the amount of precision you need to go across these paths is ludicrous. So I came up with a new game plan. So let me go ahead and illustrate the route that I have for everyone here. So just pretend that Ai's in a ball, he's not in one, and here's how this is gonna work. We're gonna roll right in, start the level, bada bing, bada boom, go down the skinniest path, go really, really slowly, not worry about the timer does not exist. We're gonna just barely make it across, no problem. We're gonna make it across, and then from there, we're gonna go to the thickest path, go as fast as humanly possible, zoom, basically do this. Basically that, except not falling. And then from there, we're going to this third path. We're going to, again, take our time. It's all good. The timer doesn't matter, but it matters a little bit. Go fast in the straightaway, and then do that little curve. Turn around, go to the second path here, and then we want to go all the way down to this point where there's the last banana. At this point, hopefully we'll have enough time to be able to turn around from here and then back into the goal pole. And that is the game plan. This plan seemed doable, but I basically had to do everything perfectly. I could take my time on the skinniest route, but the other 3 I needed to move as fast as I possibly could to even stand a chance at beating this. After another 200 tries, this was my best attempt. That's right, less than a second to spare. Now let's settle down for a second, because with Twister, I managed to get this on my first try. There's just 2 bananas sitting on the edges, and that's all there is to grab. And downhill is fairly simple too. Just follow the path and grab those nanners. Now Junction is another stage where it splits into 2 different paths, and there's absolutely no way you can take both of them. So I went with a harder route since it had slightly more bananas and moved on. And that's everything for World 3. The difficulty really spiked up a notch, but it's time to travel forward to World 4. Pro Skater has 4 banana bunches, which are extremely hard to get. The problem is that you can't reach them with momentum because the hills on both sides are way too steep. So all you can do here is launch yourself off of the goal poles and pray that you live. To help with the randomness, I got one of the bunches by riding along the side, and I could only get 1 bunch this way because you could only grab them while you're falling down the hill. After dozens of attempts, I got all the bananas and just needed to hit one of the goals. This was easier said than done because they move at such ridiculous speeds. I tried just passing through them as they came down, but I could not time it correctly. After a failed attempt, I decided to fool around until time ran out, and this happened. Yeah, that will never, ever, ever, ever happen again. That was stupidly good luck. But moving on, Combs was very easy, and Little Beehive was a bit of a time crunch, but I got it on the first try. Next was Dynamic Maze, and while there were only 10 bananas, getting them all in one go was not looking feasible. What makes this so hard is, of course, the walls constantly moving up and down. With some trial and error, I started to figure out a path that was fairly optimal, but there was always 1 or 2 sections where I just stayed in place for like 5 seconds, and that wasted way too much time. There were a few instances where I got either 9 or 10 bananas, but it didn't matter because there was no time left on the clock and I couldn't make it to the goal. So the best I could do was get all but 1 banana with less than a second to spare. Triangle holes was a little scary because I had to pull back at the right time without falling, but I pulled it off and got those yellow ding-dongs. Launchers was a ridiculous level. Getting the 5 bananas and the green goal is a challenge I don't like remembering. The only way I could do this was to perfectly line myself up with the giant pole as well as stay in a straight line. Something that happens a lot when you get launched is your monkey gets flown off to the side or it gets pushed away from the pole. So basically, as soon as I got launched, I had to pull back and very carefully weave towards the center and blindly guess where the bananas were. Maybe some people find getting this goal easy, but this was my first time ever doing it. The stages level perfectly describes how it went. Randomizer was completely random. The idea was to launch myself to the top and get the bananas from the top to the bottom floor. How and when you get launched into the air, well, that's anybody's guess. After maybe 30 tries, I bounced my monkey up to the second floor and finally on the third floor without flying off. And what's funny is I've never actually been up here before, so that was pretty neat. So World 4 has been mostly a whirlwind thus far, and then there's coin slots with just 1 banana. You know, it's really funny how drastically the difficulty jumps per stage. And you basically just play Seesaw Bridge since all the bananas are just there on your path. And this is the shocker of the year. I completed Arthropod on the first try. There were 2 bananas to get on the sides, and then I just had to wait for the goal to pop up. This stage usually takes me about 10 tries on average, so I'm surprised I got it so quickly. Let's hope this good fortune continues on into World 5. Wormhole was pretty simple, and I also discovered this banana bunch that was behind this teleporter. I didn't even know that was a thing. Freefall just happened to have 1 banana bunch, and it's floating in the freaking air. That means I needed to not only grab it, but also hit the goal pole as I'm falling down. And of course, I can only reach the hardest one. There were a couple attempts where I got the bananas, hit the ground a few times, and then fell, which was just painful to see. But eventually, I figured out the right speed and the right angle to go at and was able to complete this level. Melting Pot had 1 banana bunch to get, but it was in the most awkward spot. I kept peeling left and I was just going too fast or too far. After about 30 or 40 tries, I finally got the bananas and finished up. Mad Shuffle was painless, and following that was Beat Screen, which was also a cakewalk. Jump Machine wasn't really hard per se, it was more annoying than anything. There were some banana bunches to get on each platform, and what wasted a lot of time was missing the banana and getting thrown 50 feet in the air. This took quite a lot of attempts because I just kept missing bananas, but after a while I managed to finish the level. Zigzag Slope had some sloppy slopes that were quite steep. I hope you liked my fancy little alliteration, but anyway, we just needed to angle II precisely to get all the bananas. Tower has a banana bunch in the middle to grab, and Toggle has a bunch at the end of its level. Fluctuation is a great word to explain how I felt about this level. Let's talk about the atrocious banana placements. There's 3 rows of them high in the air, and what you have to do is bounce from one tiny cube to the next tiny cube and collect them. And keep in mind, you have to get the whole row without a single mistake because the time limit is so short. It was incredibly easy to mess up the speed and the angle, and honestly, I was raging by the end of this. And what's worse, there's no feasible way to get all these bananas. I got the first 2 rows by some sort of miracle, but there's just not enough time to get the last row of bananas. I mean, perhaps I could optimize my route better, but I don't think so. I mean, seriously, those damn cubes are gonna haunt me for the next month. Moving on to World 6, Combination has 1 banana bunch to grab, and Punch Seesaws just requires you to play the level normally. I was surprised to see so few bananas in Opera, and on top of that, also being able to get them all. You just have to circle around the top staircase, and you're good to go. It's very hard to see the bananas in Brandished, but they're basically just circling around the top spin thingy, and that's it. And next up was Tears. This one almost gave me tears. The only good thing to say about this level is the bananas are only on the ends and not on the pathways, but that means I have to take the top path, which has the skinniest curve I've ever seen. And worse, it's also slanted, making this nearly impossible to complete. The only method I found that worked was to use something called pause buffering. A lot of speedrunners use pause buffering to implement hard tricks. Basically how it works is when you pause, you're able to more quickly change your inputs. So after tons and tons of attempts and lots of pause buffering, I slowly but surely made my way to the end and miraculously scraped by to the bananas. Cliffs was an incredibly easy level, and I thought I'd have more trouble with narrow peaks, but as it turns out, I completed this on my first try. I'd also like to mention that this is a great level for learning camera control in Monkey Ball. I've played this one a ton of times, but I usually don't take the harder path. It took about 5 tries to complete Detour. I just needed one good jump off the ramp. Switch Inferno has no bananas to collect, and I thought Folders would be kind of hard, but it really wasn't. I simply ran forward for the first 2 bananas, then moved over to the sidelines and just timed out getting the other bananas. I died a few times, but it honestly wasn't that bad. And that's it for World 6. We had a strong start with Spiral Bridge since, like a lot of levels, I was just playing like normal. Wavy options might look familiar. It's basically curvy options, but much easier. And I only needed to take 3 of the 4 paths instead of all of them, which was icing on the cake. The hardest part of this stage was aligning myself to take the skinny path. It was like this weird illusion. It almost looked like I was lined up correctly, but was actually too far to the right. After loads of attempts though, I finally lined up properly, and while I came close to falling, I managed to get across. After that, I really needed to scurry across to the other 2 paths, but it honestly wasn't that bad. This took way less time than curvy options, so that's all that really matters to me. After that was an easy streak of levels, including Obstacle, Domino, and Sieve. Initially, I thought Phlox was also going to be pretty easy. I usually clear this stage no problem, but the banana bunches are on the complete opposite sides, and there's no rhyme or reason to the platforms moving up and down. I mean, okay, technically there is a pattern, but you'll either die trying to get through the stage quickly, or you'll be patient and eventually time out. So unfortunately, I was able to get all the bananas except for one of the bunches. There's a possibility this could be tasked, I'm guessing, but I'm not too sure. Double Spiral is double the trouble because there's bananas on the green and orange parts of the spiral. I didn't think I could do this, but I went ahead and tried anyway. I started by getting the bunches on the top, and I kept falling over and over. But after some tries, I discovered you can get the bananas a little early, which gives me time to fall on the bottom platform and survive. So after that, I had to do the same thing for the other banana bunch, then just finish the stage. I'm pretty surprised you could do this one, I'm not gonna lie. And Hierarchy isn't too bad to complete, unlike 8 Bracelets. This is already a hard stage, and there just so happens to be 2 banana bunches on the opposite sides. What that means is I have to maintain insanely good momentum without making any mistakes, or I lose my speed and can't get around. And on top of that, there's a banana bunch on the top goal platform and a banana in the middle one. So after a buttload of practice, I managed to clear this stage with less than 10 seconds to spare. Good grief. Oh, but this next stage, oh man. I mean, just look at how fast these triangles move. Oh, I had to do the most insane movement of all time. I just held straight. Alright, let's move on to World 8. Pistons was challenging because I had to constantly stop and wait for the platforms to stop shooting into the air. Thank God there's spaces I can stand on while it's happening. With some practice, I was able to clear this one. And Soft Cream was also pretty easy. The bananas were chilling at the end of the stage. Momentum has always been a very annoying stage to me simply because you're given so little wiggle room to swap between the platforms. And I had to go through this 3 times instead of just 1 to ensure I could get all the bananas. It took dozens of attempts, but I eventually got all the bananas here. Entangled Path was really simple, and I thought Totters would be as well. This one surprisingly took about 20 attempts, because the platforms were really hard to navigate, so I had to keep trying different angles until I found a way to get all the bananas without falling. For Vortex, I just needed to make sure that I was reaching the top platform before initially dropping below for the rest of the bananas. And my god, Warp was freaking miserable. I knew it was gonna suck because there's bananas in between bumpers on a platform that is tilted. The first 2 segments went okay, it was the 3rd one that's evil. I basically needed to get all the bananas in one fell swoop, while also not hitting the bumpers. This is a lot easier said than done because the bananas are so close to the bumpers, and your movement has to be extremely precise. There were a lot of attempts here where I would get all the bananas, but then fall afterwards because the stage itself is just a nightmare. But centuries later, after, 100 tries, I managed to finish the level. And thank God the rest of World 8 was a breeze. These include trampolines, swing shaft, and linear seesaws. And with that, we're on to World 9. Serial jump is a pretty scary one, considering I have to constantly warp myself around a bunch of circle platforms without stopping. Although surprisingly, this didn't take as many attempts as I thought it might. That's because the game guides you in the right direction to hop from circle to circle. The hardest part really was just getting around the goal ring so I could get the bananas and continue. So I was able to clear it, but not with much time to spare. The next couple levels were pretty straightforward, like cross floors and spinning saw. It was easy to fall off the saw, but it wasn't too tragic. Chipped Pipes is another level that branches into two paths, but I had a feeling we could actually complete this one. I took the harder route and got the bunches, and thought I needed to turn back around. But near the beginning, however, even with a lot of speed built up, you can't really go all the way back. So out of frustration, I blasted myself to the other side and what the heck, I actually got across. It didn't look like I could clear that gap, but hey, the more you know. Flat Maze isn't nearly as bad as it looks, especially since most of the bananas are in one location. By using this skip, I can land right at the end and then simply turn around and grab all the bananas. Exploits like this is what makes Monkey Ball such a fun game. Guillotine had some bananas at the end, then Corkscrew was a walk in the park. Orbiters has bananas on one side of these flipping platforms, and Twin Basin was easy as pie. Air Hockey was another level that required a lot of trial and error. There's stupid bananas on the edges of each handle, which means I had to learn when the handles moved and when they didn't. There was a lot of bouncing around and dying, but after lots of tries, I started to optimize a route. After getting all the bananas, I had 10 seconds left and did some pause buffering to get into the goal. And with that, there's one more world to go. Starting off World 10 was Training, which is similar to wavy and curvy options, except it was a lot easier. For one of the paths didn't have bananas, and honestly, the routes themselves weren't as skinny as some of the other ones. This maybe took like 10 tries or so. I just had to go back and forth 3 times and that was it. You basically have to halt to clear this next one. There's a lot of bananas at the end, but you'll get there with very little time. I'll admit that I honestly had a pretty good run of this. I sat at the goal ring for a second just because I could. Mountain has one banana bunch to nab, and Disorder was somewhat hard. Getting the second banana bunch puts you in a tricky position to get to the goal pole, but otherwise it wasn't that bad. And 3D Maze was stupid easy. Labyrinth, however, is one of the most confusing levels, at least for those that have never played it. There's a linear path that you have to take just to clear the level, but I also have to get 3 sets of banana bunches. 2 of these are within my grasp, but the other one is way off course. Considering the time is already limited, I'm not sure how to tackle this problem. A few minutes later, my only idea was to bounce off of this platform, and unbelievably, it actually works and it's relatively fast. Only problem is I ran out of time, and that's because my run was really sloppy. So after dozens of more attempts, I managed to get all 3 of the banana bunches as well as clear the goal. Holy crap, this was a doozy to figure out. Postmodern, on the other hand, was a walk in the park. Now, out of all the levels I've played, Revolution was by far the most repulsive and obnoxious level to complete. There's only 4 banana bunches, but they're all on different platforms. The problem, of course, is that the stage keeps on flipping, and the only way you can avoid dying is to land on these tiny pillars while you're being flipped at high speeds, and if you're lucky you have a floor. Surviving several rotations is nothing short of horrible. It was incredibly easy to slip off, and even worse than that, keeping track of where I needed to go was almost impossible. Everything looks the same. After hundreds of attempts though, I did beat the level, and honestly, I wasn't even satisfied. I just left feeling angry. Nothing about this level was fun. Now, I'm not gonna lie, the last 2 levels are pretty anticlimactic after that. Invisible was fairly easy, and Created By only took a couple tries. Oh my god, that was way more complicated than I was expecting. I thought about also trying the levels from challenge mode that aren't included in the story, but this video is already long enough, so I think we'll stop there. Out of every level, 6 out of 100 weren't possible. And what's crazy is that a couple of these levels might be possible if they were tasked well. And that's about all I got for you guys today. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Until next time.